everybody. First, let me show you what I've created. The first two projects I did with my cherry box for May. I created that card and I created this layout. I used some wood veneer from my stash. Wood veneer is the product focus for the Rediscover Your Stash Facebook group this month, so I wanted to do a little bit with some of my wood veneer. Today we're going to do these two photos. I have this little dream piece, which was one of the cut aparts. I really liked that. And the cute little baby in those photographs is me. So I wanted to play with the watercolor set from the kit. I'm going to pull that out. These are like shimmery watercolors. And I was not in the mood. Let's say I was not in the mood to get super messy today. So I'm going to create a background with the watercolors, but I'm not going to get super messy. I am using this big fat brush first, and I'm going to pounce two of the blue paints onto the top third of my layout. I'm just using my mini mister to activate these watercolors, and I am not using a lot of water, so I want to get as much pigment onto my page as I possibly can, but I don't want to use a lot of water. Again, I just wasn't feeling like being messy today. So this is a really simple technique for watercoloring. It gives you the look of like clouds. I'm going to use two different blue colors and two different sizes of these like pouncing brushes. If you can hear background noise today, it is because I think spring has sprung, and wow, the birds are noisy. And I bet my neighbors are going to decide to mow their lawns. So hopefully they decide a little bit later after I get this voiceover done, because this is the only voiceover I have to do today. So I started with a base coat of the lighter blue. Now I'm coming in with that darker blue. And again, I don't want to use a lot of water. I am watercoloring on hot press watercolor paper. So it's made to take a good bit of water, but I'm just, like I said, I just wasn't in the mood for a mess today. So I'm just using a round brush and kind of pouncing. For the bottom third of my layout, I'm using a mini mister. I'm going to grab the greens. So I have a light green and a dark green. And for the bottom part, I'm going to use the flat paintbrush that came in the kit. And then I also pulled a smaller flat paintbrush from my stash, from my tools, from my paintbrush cup. You notice I'm starting at the bottom and just making these upward strokes with the flat paintbrush. So at the top of my page, I pounced it, right? And that's going to give us the look of clouds or the look of a sky. For the bottom part, I am using this upward stroke. And then I'm going to start with the light green and come in with the dark. Again, just using a couple spritzes of water, just activating that pigment and using the pigment pretty straight, not using a lot of water. The more water you would add, the lighter your color would be. I wanted to get a pretty good shimmery amount of pigment onto my page. Once I had the lighter first layer of green down, I'm going to come in with the smaller paintbrush and a darker green. And what I'm doing is I'm just flicking this up again because I want the top to kind of resemble a sky. I want the bottom to kind of resemble grass. So by using these two different types of brushes and these two different types of paint techniques, the pouncing and then this upward push with the paint, I'm creating that look, that kind of look of a abstract sky and then an abstract kind of grass across the bottom. The third type of brush I'm going to use for my project is a fan brush. So fan brushes, they're like amazing little splatter brushes. That's what I call them. That's what they are. They are amazing little splatter brushes. So I'm going to just I'm just going to grab some of the paint, which is, again, very, very little water, so highly pigmented. I'm going to dip my fan brush in there and splatter away. Set my paper aside because I want to let it dry completely before I start creating my layout. So I'm looking at my photos and I'm looking at this cut apart piece that I know I want to use. I'm just going to trim the photos ever so slightly, not a ton, just to make them a little bit smaller on one side, because I didn't want to end up, I want them to be pretty close together on my page, but I wanted to make sure that they didn't go in a straight line across the middle of my page. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to go through what I have left of my Cherry Box collection, what products I haven't really dug into yet, which ones I've used a lot of, and make some product decisions. First product decision I am making, I want to fussy cut. So I said this when I unboxed the Cherry Box, and I was not kidding. I really want to fussy cut those little twinkle lights. And I felt like this layout was just the perfect way to do that. I also really want to use some of this kind of wood grain paper. So I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm going to start by fussy cutting these little fairy lights. They're so cute and I love them. And I just knew right away fussy cutting them is what we needed to do. Now that I have those twinkle lights fussy cut, look at them. Don't they look amazing? Everything's going to get a little bit of vintage photo distress oxide because I felt like this was just the collection that needed it. I used it a lot on my other projects as well that I created with this particular Cherry Box. I'm going to go ahead and kind of ink these up, little twinkle lights, and then I'm going to adhere them across the top of that wood grain paper. So I want to cut this wood grain paper into a strip, but I'm not sure how wide to make it. And I know there are elements I want to make sure that get on this page. So I'm going to start with the twinkle lights I fussy cut because I really want them to be on this page. And then you'll notice when I glued down the twinkle lights, I didn't glue all the way to the edge. And I did that so I could do this. So I want to take my photos, both of my photos and this little cut apart piece, and I want to tuck them up underneath the twinkle lights. There is some empty space on both of these photos that I can use that I can tuck them up under. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then once I have those pieces in, I can go ahead and use my guillotine trimmer and get that section to the right width. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my watercolor paper. So I created this layout completely, and then I popped it underneath something nice and flat and heavy to kind of flatten it out. But you will see it, I mean, all things warp. Paper is not meant to get wet, so there's no like unwarpable paper. That just doesn't exist in the scrapbook world. So you'll see it kind of did curl up a little bit. Totally fine with that. Inking up this whole panel with a nice kind of heavy layer of the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink, which gives me nice separation between my background and the main part of my layout. And now it's time for the super fun part, the embellishing. So I grabbed a lot of the floral die cuts from the die cut pack. I'm going to cut them up a little bit. And I want to use the flowers on this layout. So the kit contains those Kaiser Craft paper flowers. Now they are a little bulky, but you know what I did? I just took my scissors and I snipped them apart. I snipped their little bottoms off. And then I put them under a heavy book, which kind of flattened them out. And I think they'll work in an album. I'm going to take one of these little journaling cards. I'm going to tear it in half. The reason I did this is because I don't like the straight edges. I want this layout to look a little like more flowing, and I don't like how those sharp edges go across the middle. I kind of want to soften them up, and I'm going to do that with embellishments. So I'm going to use that dream as my title, and I'm actually going to kind of place it over. I know the card has the word dream on it, but it's a bit hard to read, and I really wanted that to be my title. So it works perfectly with the photos of me in my crib. These photos are from the 1970s. They are at least 43 years old. And these are not the originals. Whenever I do a heritage layout, the photos are never the originals. They are always digitized and printed at home. And the originals are in archival boxes. So I'm just deciding where I want all these pretty floral clusters to be. I'm going to tuck them in and around in all different spots. And then I'm going to add in these Kaisercraft flowers. I'm going to put them into little clusters. The way that I adhered them to my paper, first I snipped off the backs as close as I could get. And then I'm just going to put, you'll see here, I'm going to put some Nuvo Deluxe adhesive, just blob it on the back of the flowers. And then I kind of held it still for a beat or two, just so that Nuvo Deluxe adhesive could really adhere to the paper and adhere the flower to the paper. I have used these flowers before, and this is gonna sound terrible, but they do smush nice. I mean, so when you put them in an album, because they're just paper, they seem like they're gonna be super bulky, but once you put them in an album, they kind of will smush down again because they're just paper, and they really end up not adding a ton of bulk. I mean, I put this layout underneath a big heavy book and kind of smushed it. So, FYI, Kaisercraft paper flowers smush well. Okay, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to adhere all these pretty clusters down, and that's what we're going to call this layout done. You still have time to place an order and get yourself a cherry box. A subscription would actually start with this May cherry box, and it's lovely. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.